Cool. I guess we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Hopefully everyone had a nice break. And it looks like we have a pretty good agenda. But there's still, I'm sure, room. So if you have any agenda items, please feel free to add it. But it looks like Todd's up first, so I'll hand it over to him.
Okay. Hi everybody. We have a what I would say is like a candidate release for our React SDK. So this has been a long time coming. It's not really that big in terms of lines of code, but I think the functionality is quite significant. We've had a lot of input. We ended up merging a spec proposal that was opened way back in the summer, just last month, to support some of the features you're going to see here. So I'm going to do a quick demo with a little toy app I have just built with Create React App, and show like 3 or 4 of the main features of the SDK and a tiny bit of code, but I'll try and keep it quick. So I'll share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. So the first demo that I want to show you is the built-in suspense support. So this is just a React component here, and you can see that we have the OpenFeature provider, which is associated with the provider we have above here. This is just our JavaScript in-memory provider, but with a nice little additional hacky feature in here where it basically delays its initialization for a set amount of time. So by default, it waits 1 second before it's ready. So you can see we have this React component, and then we're using the OpenFeature provider kind of React provider element to wrap it. And then we have our actual feature flag containing component here that just shows a new message depending on this new message flag. The really interesting part of this demo is the built-in suspense. So what you'll see when I show you this, when I open this page, is that initially we see the fallback, and then after 1 second, the app becomes ready. Just so you can see that, or the feature flag becomes ready, just so you can see that I'm not making it up. You actually change the delay here. So this means after 5 seconds, our fake in-memory provider is going to admit that it's ready, and you see that the component isn't rendered basically until the feature is ready. So this is really nice because it means that you can build a React app, and any components you have in your app that require feature flags, if you want, they won't be rendered until your provider is ready. So basically it allows you to defer all rendering of those components until your feature flag provider is ready, and then they all render with the correct feature flag, so that your UI isn't jumping all over the place as your provider becomes ready, and you're not getting default values while the provider is still starting up. So that's a pretty cool feature, I think. The second one I'll demo is the flag change events. So this is kind of an opt-in feature, but we have the same kind of thing. We have the feature provider, and then we have another in-memory provider here. The interesting thing that's happening here is I have an interval set, so that every 2 seconds, my feature flag is changing. There's no event handlers here that I'm setting up or anything like that. But what you'll see is when the feature flag value changes, the React component is re-rendered. So I'll go to flag change. You'll see every 2 seconds, we get a flag change event, and the UI is redrawn. So this is really useful if you wanted to connect to a provider that supported live updates, and some flag changed, and you wanted to push those all in real time or near real time to the UI. Maybe not something that you'd always want to take advantage of in the UI, but it's kind of a feature you can opt into. And the last one, very important for front-end applications, is context change. So same kind of thing. We have a component here in the OpenFeature provider wrapper, and then we have an inner component that has a flag. This flag takes advantage of the user context. So there's a property called silly that we're switching back and forth. We're just inverting basically with the click of a button. And here it's the same kind of thing. We haven't set up any event handlers or anything. We're just evaluating this feature flag within our component and rendering it. But what you'll see here is that when we click this button, the context is changed, so that property is inverted. And that also causes all interested components to be redrawn. So if this was the login button in your application or something like that, any flag that was sensitive to a context would be reevaluated and re-rendered. So you see here, if I click this button, there's a change. If I click it again, it immediately updates. So basically what the React SDK gives you is this context sensitivity, this flag change sensitivity, all without ever writing any event handling logic yourself. You just add a flag evaluation to your code, and things are going to update, things are going to redraw when the provider is ready, when a flag value changes, when something relevant in the context changes. So those are the kind of the key features, as well as the scoping you were seeing before. So I think I briefly, really quickly went over this, but within this element scope, you basically are using a particular provider. You could have more than one of these in your app associated with different providers, but anything inside this scope is basically going to be connected to the same set of event handlers and the same provider state. I think that's it. And I see a question from Jonathan. Oh, Jonathan, I can't hear you. I don't know if that's just me or if that's everyone.
All right, you should be able to hear me now. Sorry. Yeah, from a provider side, do we need a React provider, or does this work with the existing JavaScript provider?
This works with all of the existing web SDK stuff. So you don't, the provider itself has no awareness of that it's being used in a React context. You just fulfill the normal provider contract and everything works. There's some caveats. For example, if your provider doesn't support init, if it's always ready, then it's always going to be ready. So you have to be doing that right. But no, there's no special interfaces or anything on the provider end. Any other questions? I guess one other quality of life thing to note, the way that we've done this is everything in the React SDK is a re-export of everything in the web SDK. So you have access to all of the exported symbols from the web SDK directly from the React SDK. But they are the same instances. They'd be the same singletons. It's just a re-export. It's in effect an aliasing. But the nice thing is you never have to mix your React SDK and your web SDK imports. For all intents and purposes, you're just using the React SDK. Let me see. Do I have any questions here? No, that's about it. Okay. If there's no other questions. Oh, sorry.
Yes, I have a question. I can't find the hand thing, but yes, Andreas from Spotify. This was super cool. We have been working on this on our own. But I'm curious, did you have to change any of the events? Or what happens when the context changes? Is like flags will stay on their current value until the new value arrives, right?
Yeah, so that is one thing that maybe could be improved, and I think Jonathan brought this up earlier too. We don't have any new events, and I don't believe we need any, because we do have a context. Sorry, we do have a stale event as well. What the React SDK doesn't have right now is basically going back into a pending state, or a state that would say reactivate the suspense when the context has changed, but the new flag values have not yet arrived. So I think that's something that we can introduce in an on-breaking way, and I think it's probably an important feature. I don't think that there's any additional events that need to be defined for it. I think it's something that we could just basically add in pretty easily. But yeah, I don't think anything fundamentally needs to change. That's also a tiny bit trickier because providers would need to be setting their state to stale in the hang time between a context change that they get and the resolution, which is technically possible, but they would have to be doing that for that to work in the front end. So we could have some guidance on that. We could also look at seeing what we can do to help from the SDK end to make sure that that's the case, but that's been a bit of a challenge when I tried to look at it before, but open to ideas there. Great question.
Yeah, I also think the spec, the stale event, we looked at that, and from the spec it doesn't seem that it would be usable for this, but maybe that has changed. I'll look and open a question in that case.
Yeah, we can discuss it further. Maybe there's something else we need, or maybe we just need to refine the semantics of the stale event a little bit. But yeah, we can definitely do that. Great question.
Could you summarize that again? Like I think I understand the full feature that we're hoping to achieve there, but I want to make sure.
Yeah, so an easy way to think about it is relative to the initial kind of on ready. So your provider, like especially if you're thinking about suspense, that's probably the best way to think about this. So there's probably other implications too. So when you first start the app in the suspense mode, like I was showing here before, this right now the provider isn't ready, and then it is. So there's a hang time when the suspense rendered component is being shown. So in context change here, this is instant because I'm using the in-memory provider. But hypothetically, there could be a hang time between when I, as a user, click this button and when the canonical flags have arrived. So that hang time isn't really represented well, and could be wired back into the suspense so that when I hit here, if it takes 1 second to fetch the flags, I see a suspense, a suspended component, the suspense component fallback is rendered or not, depending, but it would give us the flexibility to at least do that. I hope that helps.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's it. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so this is all actually running locally. It is available in a PR right now that I believe has the required approvals. I just haven't yet merged it. So I'll probably be merging that after this meeting. This is still only an experimental release. But I think pending some discussions and decisions, we can consider our first non-experimental release. At least I think this is a good candidate. I think it has the bare bones features we'd want, but yeah, totally willing to take that offline and have further discussions.
Just one other thing to add. I did link to the React test app repo. It is a different repo that Todd was using for some of those, for that demo app and stuff that you saw. So it's in the notes if you're interested. And cool. Yeah, thanks for the demo, Todd. Well done. It looks like you are up next too, so I guess you can just keep talking. And
Yeah,
just
I'm
a
trying
reminder,
to
I did link
find the
the notes again.
schedule. Oh yeah, okay, maintainer outreach. Yeah, so the only other thing to talk about, this is a bit of a personal one for me too. The project has grown very rapidly. The amount of SDKs we've had has grown significantly. The amount of providers we've had, obviously, also growing significantly. I didn't actually share these, but I was looking at some statistics in terms of usage. Our adoption is increasing fairly rapidly, especially of the older components, the more stable components that are 1.0 and that type of thing. And I'm having a hard time keeping up. I won't speak to all of the other maintainers, but there's a lot of action. So I've at least lately over the past couple weeks been trying to identify people who have been contributing, been in the community for a while, and trying to promote them, trying to nominate them for more responsibilities, just to help lighten the load. I understand obviously that very few people are working on OpenFeature full time, or even paid to work on it at all. So that's understood. But if you look at our contributor ladder, the responsibilities are not overwhelming. I think that you could easily be an approver or even a maintainer with just a few hours a week, a couple hours a week in some cases. So if that's something you're interested in, you're in this call and that's something you're interested in, or you're watching this video later, or you know anybody who would be interested in helping to maintain an SDK or components or anything, just let me know, speak up, talk to one of the other maintainers, and we can look into how we can onboard that person, just to help maintain the quality that we're looking for and kind of share the workload. That's all I have to say on that one. Any questions specifically about that? You may see PRs from me, more PRs from me in the upcoming weeks, nominating people for approval and that sort of thing. And in all of those, I try and like explain what this person has done, why they're qualified, and that kind of thing. So feel free to take a look at those when they come up. I think that's it.
All right, thanks, Todd. I just have a couple quick ones. First one is we're looking at creating like dedicated Slack channels like per technology. We probably won't do it for all technologies right away, but we already have one for React, and Todd just created one for .NET. We'll probably also do it for JavaScript and a few other ones. It's just a nice place to ask very specific questions about those technologies. We can post like when a new SDK release happens, things like that, without kind of polluting like the main OpenFeature channel. So we'll keep creating those as they come up. We don't want to like overload people with additional Slack channels, but I do think having more like technically focused conversations in very specific parts could help. And we'll probably put in more like pull requests and stuff into those specific channels to try to avoid polluting like the main OpenFeature channel. So look for those. We'll try to link them from the main channel as we create them. And if there's any that you'd like to see specifically, definitely let us know. Or actually, you can create them yourself too. I think everyone in the CNCF Slack channel has the ability to create Slack channels. So if you think there's value in it, feel free to go ahead and create it, and just look for that over the next few weeks. We did have someone join our Slack channel earlier this week asking about the mentorship opportunities. So it's the LFX. I'm actually not entirely sure what that stands for. It must be like Linux Foundation something. But it's basically like a mentorship opportunity. So if there's anyone that's willing and able to kind of propose a project and help mentor someone for a few months, it's a pretty cool opportunity. I did Google Summer of Code last year, and it was nice to find some really talented students that are interested in kind of contributing to open source. So if anyone is interested, please take a look. I did link in the notes the CNCF like discussion related to that. The deadline is January 24th to submit the proposal. And so yeah, I definitely encourage you to do it if you have the time. Next topic. So this one is just to kind of get it out there. I opened up a spec change about basically for a long time we've been calling it named clients. It's kind of there's sort of a history involved in that, which is why we ended up going with that route. But in a nutshell, it basically allows you to bind clients to providers effectively. It means that you can have like a default provider that could be, go to, your primary feature flag management tool, but you could also maybe create or register a couple other providers for, other management tools or, in process, like whatever the case may be. It basically provides some pretty nice flexibility. But the name was always a little bit odd. Even if you look at like our SDK feature list, we do call it client or named clients or client names or something. And as we start documenting it, it becomes a little bit difficult to explain that concept. So I did create the a pull request, like I said, in the spec that tried to clarify it. The initial idea was namespace, but there's quite a bit of conversation about, maybe looking at something like scope or domain or some other term that may be a better fit. So I'm good with anything as long as it basically makes it clear what the intention is, and it'd actually be nice if we could find a name that wouldn't require any changes if possible to existing SDKs, or if we do, they're very, very minor and non-breaking. So that's kind of the goal. It's really just kind of to clarify what the intent behind this feature is and make it a little bit easier to kind of document and talk about. So if you're interested, I have the pull request linked in the notes here. Just read through the thread and kind of vote for your favorite term, and I'll try to go ahead and update that pull request in the next day or two. Any questions on that before I move on to another topic? Well, it's a fairly minor one, but it's nice to just kind of get that out of the way and move on to bigger spec changes. Last one.
So, Mike, the idea is that we sorry, Federico here.
Oh, no problem, man.
We're gonna vote on the issue for different names? Or is there
we could do that. Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like if you want to add a comment there on your favorite, I can try to compile a list if we get enough. If it becomes very obvious that whatever domain is the term, like I'll just roll with it in the spec change, and then people can, I guess vote through
okay.
approvals.
Yeah,
So
we don't necessarily need to have a formal vote. I mean, we can if that's what we decide, but I think generally votes are good to avoid if we can just come to a consensus through discussion. But if we have to, we can vote. But I think the main idea is just to talk a little bit more.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Cool. So definitely take a look at that discussion if you have any thoughts either way. I think there's some really good points about the intent behind this feature and some of the names and stuff. Last thing is I did put in a request. It actually took quite a bit of time, but the CNCF did actually just allocate it earlier this week. It's this Equinox or whatever this company is called. Basically, they offer like bare metal hardware. We do have access to that now. So if there's any if we need it for anything like GitHub runners, or if we run a demo app or whatever, that is available to us now. So I think I'm the only one that has access at the moment, but I'm certainly happy to invite people or create some resources that people can get access to. So just ping me if you need anything. There are some limits, of course, to it. It's actually quite expensive, and the hardware they provision is pretty massive. So we could share it for a lot of things, but we have to be a little bit careful because there is like real cost to someone associated with this. So that's it for me. There's one last one. I guess it's not really assigned to anyone at the moment, but just a reminder for the GC elections. We did have a technical issue, so we had to unfortunately have everyone re-vote. Everyone that had voted that was kind of affected by this was reached out to. And so we'll make sure that everyone that had voted has re-voted before we lock it down, but we're hoping to have all the votes finished by January 31st still, and we're on track for that. So if you haven't already and you're interested, please check out the link in the notes or look at the Slack channel. You see all the information there, and you basically just have to be part of the org. And then you have to log in with your GitHub account, and then you just fill it out based on the prompts, and we'll go ahead and hopefully get that wrapped up at the end of the month. If you do not have access, just message in the channel, and we'll make sure that we address that. All right, that's it for my section. Thomas, looks like you're up next.
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about the remote evaluation protocol survey that we had, and wanted maybe to share the results that we had if you want to. So let me share my screen. I can try to find it. Really Firefox here. Okay, it doesn't want to share. Can someone help me with that? I mean, share for me. Can send a link if you want to.
Yeah, I'll share if you send me a link.
Yeah, I'll send it to Slack. But basically, what we can see is we had like 6 tools in the survey, and what we can see is like everyone is doing client and server evaluation, meaning that you can see in third screen who's doing what, but basically what we can see is like a lot of people are doing remote evaluation for when it comes to client side, and more in process when it comes to server side. A lot of people are using classic HTTP endpoints to get the feature flag, and not like gRPC or GraphQL or anything. So it's more like straightforward than we were expecting in the beginning. And when it comes to polling the flags and like flag changes, we can see that we have like different system. Some are using WebSocket, some other are not WebSocket. Like polling is the most voted one. Also, we've seen that some people are like more reacting when you have a new page loading, and like some have a mix of servers server send event. I think that's how SSE is. So yeah, it's more mixed in that area than it is for the rest. But I guess the next phase for this protocol is going to be to define the protocol itself. And I think one thing where we are kind of sure that we should start is like we should start over HTTP and not like any other layer, just because it's what it seems to be the most used in every one that answers the survey. So I don't know, maybe we can link this link to in a doc if in a Google Doc if anyone want to look at the result. But yeah, basically you can have a first look, and I think next step will be to digest that and start like defining exactly what we want for the remote evaluation protocol.
Yeah,
One
like
of the
a
things I
summary or
think is
go ahead. I was just gonna say a quick summary like blog post could be interesting too. So maybe we could talk about what that would take to do.
I think one of the more interesting questions here is this ranking, and you can see how very different the most important versus least important things are between the server and the client. And yeah, I just think that's really interesting, and it's definitely divergent enough between the two that you could see how it would seriously impact how SDKs are designed, how providers are designed, and a protocol for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I
I
guess
think
for that, is
yeah,
there
go
an
ahead.
easier way to present that? I find like it difficult to understand like what the colors mean. Like I understand like now that I've read it a couple times, I kind of understand the different colors mean most important. But I wonder if we can like, I don't know, maybe just like do like a simple like, I don't know, most important in 6 points and just like rank it by like the number of total points or something like that. That might be easier to digest.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. Like, I think we can extract it as a spreadsheet, so that we can probably do whatever we want. So yeah, can try to
Yeah,
do
maybe for the
something here.
blog we could do some nice, easier to parse visualizations there. I have a few ideas for
Yeah.
how we could represent that.
I mean, this one is good enough for when you're really looking at it, but when it comes to just like create a blog post, it's probably not the best view that we can have.
Yeah, unfortunately, like the Google survey stuff had pretty limited options when it came to that type of question. So I'll see what I can do to visualize it. Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone for responding to the survey. So that should be very valuable.
So just to clarity on what like the next steps are, the next steps like are maybe working on like a open API spec or something and start iterating on that, or
Yeah, exactly. I think the next step will be start working on an open API thing. Most of them will look like the actual provider APIs that we have, because it's kind of delegating the provider. But we also need to think about like how do we initialize the connection? Like how should we do polling, or should we just expect it at reload to get the new set of flags for clients, for example, and all of this. So this is why we didn't did it before. It's because we needed this to know the layer, because typically, like when it comes to refresh flags, if you do gRPC, you will probably not do it the same way as you are doing with OpenAPI. So that's why we wanted to do it first with the survey. But I guess this is the next step now. So what I will propose is like we have this OpenFeature remote evaluation protocol channel in Slack. I'm going to share the results there too, and being first. So if you want to have a look and start discussing about it, feel free. The channel is probably the best place to do it. And yeah, I can start working on the open API things. If someone want to help, all helps are welcome for sure. Definitely can be collaborative. I guess we can. I thought you created a channel, a repo, I think, for it also. So we can just like open a PR with a first version and iterate over it.
Yep.
And that's it for me.
All right, perfect. Thanks for the update there. Looks like Lucas has a few updates for us.
Yeah, it's just like 2 updates or maybe short reminders. So for the Nest.js SDK, we are kind of at the point where we think that we are also like getting into the direction of having a first version that is like really usable. We added some more features lately, so it was like integrating hooks, events, and so that you just do not have to use the basically the API of OpenFeature directly anymore. So you can use everything that OpenFeature provides to via this module registration. And we just refined the docs and we are still on it and so. And afterwards, the idea is that we integrate it into the playground, that we can just try it out there, that we maybe have an option to try it, which I'm still not 100% sure. I've talked to Mike and Mike talked to Todd. I'm not sure if we just want to have it fully integrated into it or parts of it, because otherwise you cannot use the server SDK directly anymore. I'm not sure. I think that's something we will have to find out then, or that we will just have to discuss once more. Yeah, and so if everyone is interested in that, just have a look. There are open PRs like on the docs and on like the latest features. And I think we are going to, yeah, also go into the direction of a first 1.0 release or whatever, or non-experimental release at least. That's more what we are thinking of. Yeah. So please leave feedback if you're interested.
As far as the question about the playground, I think the playground is not really a showcase, so I would say fully integrated. Like the playground is really, I think, more for maintainers at this point and experimentation than for, you know, demoing anything to anyone. It's fairly complex and heavy. So yeah, I would say just fully switch to Nest. There's lots of like for in terms of content for like explaining like how the server SDK works, like there's lots of better venues for that aren't nearly as overwhelming and don't require an understanding of Nest. I mean, the playground already requires you to understand how NX and Nest work. So it's probably a burden for a lot of people who might just want to understand how the server works. Server SDK, I mean.
Yeah, okay. Sounds reasonable to me. Sounds good. I think when we have the last features now merged, this would be the point where I would like to integrate it in, and then we can see how it works. Maybe wait for the feedback of Jonathan. That's great that you're trying it, and then we can see how it goes on. Yeah, that's for the Nest SDK. If there are no questions, then the last maybe reminder is the context propagation spec proposal. So as I said last time, I opened PR for the context propagation spec edition. Basically, the idea behind this is that you can somewhere, for example, in a HTTP controller or so, that you can say, okay, you want to have, for example, a user ID propagated down to wherever you are going to evaluate the feature flags later, so that you have kind of an in request or in process or in thread or whatever context that is then propagated and used somewhere in this. For example, in JavaScript, it might be a promise. In Java, it might be a thread local, or on Go, it may be in the context, like in the Go context, something like this, which is then propagated, and you don't have to have it explicitly. And this is mostly interesting for something that comes from outside. For example, request data, request headers or so. This is open. The spec PR is open, and I would really like to get feedback on that, and I would really like to refine on that, and that we see that it can get into it. I think one or two things are already like mentioned. I would also add a short intro that is missing to why the feature. Maybe something like, okay, context proposition is this and that. We don't have that, and I would move the code example that we have up to the beginning of the section. And yeah, for the rest, I would really like to get some feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially like in terms of an intro, I think it's very conceivable. I guess it would be very obvious to a lot of people, like, okay, you have some request data and you want to use this request data to evaluate a feature deep down in the call stack. You don't want to have to add this piece of data on 13 different function signatures to get this little, you know, piece of data down into your flag evaluation. That's primarily the use case, right? It's just propagate that all the way down without mutating 10 layers of signatures.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the update. Is there anything else? Looks like we're through the list as of now. I'll link it one more time if anyone has any agenda items they'd like to talk about. No, we could probably go ahead and wrap it up in a second. So, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick question from something I see in the chat. So Jonathan Norris mentioned Next.js SDK. Is there any like work in OpenFeature to make it compatible with Next.js as well, or is this proprietary?
Yeah, this is like for context, like yeah, that is work that we've been working on for a couple months now to get working. I would say we have a technical blog post that we're posting probably today or tomorrow that'll dive into some of the nitty-gritty challenges we faced. And I would say, yeah, even the SE we have is a bit hampered by some of Next.js's limitations right now, and we found actually some core bugs where they were shipping like code that was only supposed to be available on the server side to the client side, which was really bad and actually caused a security incident on their side. So I would say that like yeah, it's I would wait a little bit, and definitely happy to like have some of our engineers join and share some of the learnings of how we got it to work, but and obviously help out with progress on our end. But I would say like yeah, I would say there's still a couple things that need to shake out in the next JS community, and there's actually the next release that we need to like get some of the features we've built to like properly work. So I wouldn't push for it like in the next month or two, but maybe in a couple months after KubeCon, it would be a good thing to look at.
Yep, cool. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan. Anything else? All right. Well, perfect. Yeah. Thanks for joining, everyone. Hope you have a nice day, and yeah, we'll talk to you on Slack. Have a good one.
See you.
Bye.
Yeah.